Alright, welcome back to Archi. Today, we're gonna talk about one mistake could cost you millions in off-plan real estate. One of the biggest challenges in off-plan real estate that people rarely talking about, that the buyer are often making one of their biggest financial decisions in their life without ever experiencing the product. It's like buying a car without ever driving it. They cannot feel it, they cannot touch it, they cannot walk through it. In other words, they cannot truly understand the movement or experiencing the relationship between the rooms or even test the privacy. Instead, they are forced to make decisions based on floor plans, renderings, virtual tours, and sales presentations. The problem here, the floor plan can look excellent on the paper, but on the reality can feel completely different. And strangely, most of the buyers spend so much time analyzing the market, the area, the developer, or even the politics. However, they neglect analyzing the product itself that they are acquiring and underestimate the importance of the system. As a result, they may spend millions on a home they never truly understand, and that leads to much bigger problem. Most buyers know how to read prices, payment plans, etc., but very few know how to properly analyze floor plans, because the floor plans or layouts, they're not drawings on papers or lines on a paper. In fact, they are a prediction of a human behavior. It predicts how we move, it predicts how we gather, how we interact with each other, whether we're talking about family members, friends, guests, or even co-workers. A floor plan also predicts how we work, how we rest, how we experience privacy, and also it predicts how we wake up in the morning and how we end up our day in the evening. Therefore, architecture doesn't stop when the construction finishes. In fact, architecture continues every day through the way people use the space. And today, I'm gonna show you how architects read a floor plan. And for that matter, I'm gonna use Hudayriyat Golf Mansion as a case study. Before digging deeper into analyzing the floor plan of Hudayriyat Golf Mansion, I want to highlight on something. The word mansion unfortunately become one of the most overused words in luxury real estate. And today, almost any large villa get labeled as a mansion. And I believe that happening due to the lack of understanding of a true meaning of the word mansion. That's why I totally disagree. Because mansion is not simply a large and nice villa. In fact, mansion is a property with significance. And mansion is one out of one. Every mansion must have a unique identity, unique architecture, unique and special craftsmanship with imported materials. And this combination of architecture, craftsmanship, and imported material, they should not be easily replicated. Actually, many of the greatest mansions in history, they were designed and refined over hundreds or even thousands of years, and they passed through generations. So they ultimately became part of a family's legacy. But unfortunately, today, they often call a mansion for a cookie-cutter large villa. And of course, there is a huge difference between large villa and true mansion. Of course, this doesn't mean the property is bad, but it simply means the marketing language and the architectural reality, they're not always on the same page. The question that we're trying to figure out here is not whether this is a good house or no, but the true question is whether an extra 10 million worth it or no. We're comparing here the 6-bedroom fairway villas with the 6-bedroom Golf Mansion. That carries roughly 30% premium, which is somewhere around 10 million dirham. On the paper, yes, we are receiving a slightly bigger plot, slightly bigger built-up area, a basement, better positioning. But luxury real estate becomes more difficult and more complicated as the prices increases. Simply because every single dirham must justify itself, and the burden of proof becomes higher. And before even entering the villa, there is an interesting observation. The FAR for both villas are exceeding 1, which is of course not the best luxury number. And personally, I would expect a better FAR number, especially when we're entering the 10 million US dollar segment of the market. And when we look closely, almost there is no far difference between the fairway villas and Golf Mansion, which means the 30% premium cannot be justified by the area alone. Therefore, the real question, where is that additional value coming from? Let's start underground with the basement. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that every square foot is equal in value. But in fact, it's not. A square foot in the basement is not equal in value as a square foot, for example, in the living room or even master bedroom. And of course, it's not equal to a roof terrace, square foot. The basement here at the Golf Mansion contains gym, spa, massage room, office and changing facilities. Yes, I like the idea of separating the wellness function from the family function. However, the value is not only measured by area. The value mainly measured by experience, natural light, views, connection to the outdoor space, frequency of use or spatial quality. And personally, I struggle to see at the basement enough experiential value to justify the premium. Add to that another concern, which is the relationship between the wet space and the active space. And I mean by that the gym, the spa, shower, steam room are grouped together, and here the ventilation and environmental quality become extremely important, and of course we need to be careful about it. And luxury is not about how many rooms I have and what these rooms contains, but also luxury is about how these rooms feels. And now once we move upstairs to the ground floor, things becomes more interesting. In real estate, there is a point or there is a limit when bigger stops becoming better. Yes, the ground floor does several things well. If we notice, the majlis is well separated from the family areas, and the staircases is well positioned away from the entrance and the kitchen, and the visual connection through the landscape courtyard works nicely. But if we notice on the ground floor, the family living area start raising an interesting question, which is when luxury become excess, or in other words, what is the point or limit when bigger is not becoming better. Yes, larger space sounds impressive, but larger space also required longer walking distance, more cooling and more maintenance, and sometimes they become less intimate. Therefore, a mansion should not simply provide more number of rooms, but a mansion should provide better moments, better movement, and ultimately better feeling. And this is exactly where the floor plan becomes fascinating. The easiest way to waste money in luxury estate is buying a room that will never use it. When we look closely at the ground floor, we notice that many rooms are added because the area was available, rather than the experience required them. And architecture should feel intentional, not accumulated. Every room should have a purpose. Every corridor should have a reason. And every movement should feel natural. And whenever a floor plan makes you stop and ask why this room is here, it usually means something went wrong. And a few things we need to mention here. First of all, the entrance experience is not level up or matching the price tag, but it's a fit for a good villa. That's the category that belongs to it. Another thing that I noticed, which is the relationship between the kitchen and the majlis, which is not the strongest. And there is also a little bathroom that has no access from inside, only from outside. And probably there is no door or window. I'm not sure what exactly. It's not like quite clear what's the function and who it's serving and what is there is door, there is window. I'm not 100% sure about it. And I'm not sure why they place it here. Maybe it's for the people who are going to the swimming pool. It's not 100% clear. And now going to the first floor, where the bedrooms are. We need to remember that luxury architecture is not measured by the number of rooms, but it's measured by the hierarchy. And on the first floor, where the architecture becomes heavy. And here, at the first floor, the bedroom arrangement is clear. And of course, the family lounge works. And the separation between the master bedrooms and the secondary bedrooms is positive. But 6 bedrooms on paper doesn't automatically create luxury. The house should create hierarchy without labels. Which rooms belong to the owner, and which room belong to the children, and which space are private, and which space are public. The stronger the hierarchy, the stronger is the architecture. Therefore, as we mentioned, luxury is not about quantity, but it's about experience and feeling. And this brings us to my biggest concern for the first floor. The most important room in a luxury home should feel special. And personally, I believe the master bedroom in the Golf Mansion could have been developed much further. The dressing room feels conventional and can be developed much better. And also here I need to mention that the bathroom lack of the presence that I would expect. With no natural light, no double shower, it feels so conventional and so basic for such price tag. And also the relationship between the sleeping, dressing and bathing could be much better. And also on the first floor, I've noticed an interesting privacy issue in the hallway. Yes, a floor to ceiling window have been introduced in the circulation space, which is nice and visually works. But the issue here, it overlooks the bathroom for the adjacent room. Therefore, some of those site lights creates privacy issues that deserve more attention. And And of course, the size of the living room on the first floor is too big, which is negatively affect the size of the two bedrooms. And lastly, the circulation and the corridors could be more efficient. And finally, let's go to the roof. At this price level, the roof should be one of the reasons you buy this house. Yes, the roof level here is functional, the game room is useful, the lounge adds flexibility, but honestly, I expected more. A larger entertainment terrace, outdoor dining, a stronger relationship with the views. In other words, the roof should be destination, and the roof should not feel an extra room upstairs, but the roof should feel as an experience. And for a product carrying this level of premium, I wanted that experience to be stronger. So now, after we analyze the floor plan, where do I ultimately stand? The value gap is larger than the architectural gap. Yes, this is a good house, but that doesn't automatically make it a good value. Overall, I think the house is well organized. The zoning works. The planning is clear. And the basement also adds flexibility. And clearly the project offers more area in the Golf Mansions compared to the Fairway Villas. But the real question was never whether it's a bigger or no. The real question was whether a 10 million dirham premium worth it or no. And after studying the floor plans for the Golf Mansion, I personally struggled to find enough architectural improvement to fully justify a premium reaching 30%, especially when the increase in area is relatively modest. Therefore, I would personally lean towards the Fairway Villas. Not because the Golf Mansion is bad, but because I believe the value gap is larger than the architectural gap. In other words, value for money is better at the Fairway Villas. And when buyers spend additional 10 million dirham, they should not only receive more room and more areas, but they should also receive more experience. And what I mean by more experience and more feelings, things like, for example, a garage in the basement, where the owner can stop his sport cars and watch them while he, for example, working out at the gym or playing billiardo. And such a small details truly matters, and it's elevate the house and elevate the experience as well. And this is bring us back to the most important lesson, that a floor plan is not a drawing, but it's a blueprint of a future life. And if you cannot analyze it, study it, and read between the lines, especially before acquiring an off-plan property, you may only discover the mistakes after moving in when it's too late. And through Archi Lens, we don't chase the market. In fact, we decode the structure and position within it.